Hello, good afternoon. Well, this Friday has been a choppy ride for the market. There have been a lot of ups and downs for the Nifty, but for now we are holding in the green very minutely, if at all, because at one point of time we had tumbled quite sharply below the mark of 21,250, but now holding on to 21,300, so down 100 points from the day's highest point, but at least off the lowest point of the trading session as well. That's how the structure of the market is right now. It was a bigger tumble that we saw in the Bank Nifty because that index had suddenly slipped as much as 600 points. It still continues to languish with a cut of almost 200 points, but the biggest laggards there were HDFC Bank, ICICI Bank. These were the heavyweights that were dragging the markets lower. You also have sectoral gainers coming in the sense of autos and realty. So you're seeing a bit of a bounce back there. But then, of course, you also have dollar which has taken a bit of a skid. Metal stocks are gaining ground on account of that because usually they have an inverse relationship. But if you look at the overall global market texture as well, it's a bit tipsy-topsy, and I say that because when we started off the day, the futures were suggesting a green. Then the Dow futures slipped down as much as 150 points. Right now as well, it's down almost 100 points, and even the European markets have started a bit on the back foot. So we are not alone. This ride that we are seeing in terms of the roller coaster is something which is across the globe.
Yeah, it is, and you could, really map that up since day before, because day before when we cracked hard from that peak of 12,550 plus thereabouts, we weren't alone in that fall. Yesterday's recovery, we weren't alone, and today's volatility and flattish move now with the negative bias, again, we're not alone. Not just European markets, but I also want to check in on what the US futures as well may be up to, because there too, you're not really seeing a material move come by. But that said, let's take stock of what is happening in the market right now, because it's really a stock-specific day, as has been the case throughout the week. So, if you were to pick up some of those big performers and news-based trigger stocks, that's AstraZeneca, JB Chemicals, Pinamal Pharma, you've got a Gland Pharma, Laurus, Divi's Labs. They are the ones which are really the entire pharmaceutical space, which is holding out very well, along with, of course, chemicals too. All Cargo Logistics, we chatted with the management earlier today, and they're talking about the transaction being EPS accretive for all businesses. They're expecting a bounce back in their ICS business come second half of FY24. That's one stock which has held very, very steady in trade. Gail as well, a beneficiary of the global fall in oil prices. That's been holding up very smartly in trade. In fact, a couple of brokerages like an Incred have upped their price target as well. And it's now, put an add to it from the previous hold, so an upgrade, and target price is now put at 200 as opposed to 121 earlier. So these are a bunch of stocks which are looking extremely active. Gail now holding up 8%. There's Nalco, Hindustan Copper holding out very smartly. Chambal Fertilizers, which is also up about almost 4.5% in trade. And then Wipro will just come up for you on your screens as well, because that's a very, very steady mover. And the intraday graph will actually tell you that the spike has come in the last 2 odd hours or so, because up until then it was having a very flattish with a positive bias kind of session, but that big move has jumped up now only 6%. Anisha, are we missing something on Wipro?
No, I was fearing you'll ask me that question. There's nothing at all, because even I was looking for it like since half an hour. Is there something that I've missed out on? I couldn't find any news flow to support that.
Okay, we will wait for the news flow to arrive. Although, having said that, IT has been seeing some sporadic buying, so maybe today is Wipro's turn. But that said, let's take it across to our experts and find out what to make of the market. We have Shrikant Chauhan, Naresh Mirani joining in on the show right now. Naresh, hi, afternoon. Let me start off with you first. Once again, getting a little choppy, aligning ourselves with what the global markets as well are up to. What next on the cards for the index? Naresh, snap that line. Shrikant, the same question to you. What's the reading on the index now?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I think the market is consolidating. We saw good amount of sell-off on the day of just before the expiry of this particular week. But later on, we saw good equal amount of recovery from the lower levels. Now, the way the market has formed its overall technical formation, I think it is going to spend time between the range of 21,400 and 21,000 on the downside. So on the dismissal of this particular range, we can expect activity in the market Otherwise, we are expecting stock-specific activity, or maybe the activity will shift into defensives. And maybe that's the reason we are seeing a lot of activity in technology as well as in pharma companies. So broadly, we are of the view that if there is any correction, then we should look for adding some positions, or otherwise we can expect short covering above the levels of 21,400.
Naresh, what is your sense on the pattern that you're seeing today on the Nifty Bank, considering that's what's leading the fall?
Nifty from the lows. So if we look at the Bank Nifty futures for the current month, we started correcting previous day around that 48,200, 48,300 mark was high. We corrected down to 47,000, and yesterday and today we came back to that 48,200 levels. So that has become a resistance on the near term and 47,000 on the downside. So that clearly tells you that we are trying to form a range in the Bank Nifty. Yesterday, it was HDFC Bank supporting, which is not seeing a follow-up move today. So overall, time for some range-bound consolidation on the Bank Nifty as well as in Nifty. Like 20,950, 21,000 seems to be the base on the Nifty, 47,000 on the Bank Nifty. And on the upper end, 21,400 would roughly be a resistance as of now, 400, 450. Same way, 48,000. So we would get range-bound, and we could see more stock-specific action, maybe some selective action in the mid-cap and small caps also. So time to be more stock-specific. Index could consolidate for a few sessions here.
But since we're talking about Gail, listen into what the management had to say, because they talked about how the marketing margins are likely to expand going forward. Listen in.
Last year's volume marketed by us in domestic market was around 83 MMSCMD, which has gone up to 93 MMSCMD plus in current financial year, and there is a significant jump, and we expect it to grow further. In terms of average volume supplied marketed by us last year was 94, and we expect that when we exit on 31st March, it will be around 100 MMSCMD. So all these factors have enabled Gail's marketing margin to increase, and we have given guidance when we met on earning calls or with investors. We said that in whatever situations happens, we'll earn at least 3,500 crore rupees as profit before tax in this segment. But we are reviewing our guidance because we have almost touched these figures in this 6 months. So we are reviewing our guidance. Will come back when we end this quarter. So we are optimistic that at least we'll be beating our projections significantly. And in terms of next year, we expect that at least on I can say at least we'll earn 4,000 crore rupees at profit before tax from this segment.
Okay, so that was the management just a few days ago when they talked to us about how they're looking at increasing guidance. But Nitin Raheja from Julius Baer also joins us on the show. Nitin, this year has been marked by the comeback of all of these oil and gas PSUs, right? What's been your take on the same? Because there was always this regulatory overhang which challenged the institutional investors not to participate in it in a big way. Do you think some of those worries are getting abated now?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't see anything which has significantly changed from a regulatory perspective, right? So I think if you look at it, these are good short-term tactical plays. I think they're benefiting from the fact, at least the OMCs, from the fact that crude has remained relatively benign, so they haven't faced those pressures. And I think if in the next couple of months, before the election code comes into play, crude remains benign, then they'll be good. In fact, for a good part of the next year. But fundamentally, the fact that there is, they don't really have complete freedom, and there is interference from time to time from the government and the ministry, don't make them long-term sort of strategic compounders. At the most, they are good short-term plays. That's how we look at it.
You look at them only as a tactical trade and not long-term ideas, but would you extend this argument to PSU banks as well? Because there as well, there has been massive re-rating, and the biggest factor there was that the valuations are cheap, and now even the fundamentals are turning. What's your view on PSU banking space?
Look, I mean, nobody can argue that PSU banks valuations are cheap, right? And they were cheap with reason, primarily because their capital adequacy is among the lowest if you compare it with their private sector peers. Also, when you look at return on equity at around about 1%, and you compare it with their peers who are almost close to 1.5, 1.6 plus, there is a big difference, even the quality of the book. But in this rally, one of the things that we've seen is the present government has talked about bringing more accountability in the banks. They've talked about looking at underwriting norms and how it can be improved for the PSU banks, and hence we've seen this big rally. I think in a benign credit cycle, also the fact that if interest rates to look to be cut in the second half of this year, the large investment book that these banks are sitting on should help them. Also, they have very strong liability franchises, and in a time where most banks have been struggling to add their deposit and CASA base, I think that they are well placed. And so there is legs in that rally yet. And I think the broad direction that the government has set for them makes them look yet attractive.
So there's still some, value on the table perhaps for some of these public sector banking names. I want to shift focus and talk about the pharma sector now, Nitin, with you. Today, if I look at the stock prices, AstraZeneca is up 9%, Piramal Pharma spike of 8%, Concord Biotech up 8%. You also have other names from the entire space and the entire value chain. JB Chemicals, for instance, is higher. Loris, Divi's, all of these names are seeing quite an amount of excitement as well. Within APIs and CDMOs and biosimilars and manufacturers, etc., and I'm specifically talking about pharma, not including hospitals and diagnostic here. Within pure pharma, what are the names or which are the themes that you like?
So I think clearly the domestic pharma theme is today looking well placed, and they've shown consistency in terms of their earnings growth. They've shown the fact that they don't have a lot of the overhang that exists for generic pharma. So, and hence they get valued, at more attractive prices than even the generic pharma business. Having said that, this sector has had such a chronic underperformance over the last couple of years, with the generic pharma business also seeing a bottoming out of prices. You're seeing some of that, and CDMO. So I think overall, if you look at pharma, it's quite well placed from a valuation perspective, and it's had this dramatic underperformance over the last many years, and hence coming back of the pharma is expected. We do find CDMO space a little overvalued, and there is a lot of future expectation built into prices, and there is scope for disappointment out there. It's an exciting area, no doubt, and there are a couple of leaders in the space, but to expect a lot of the smaller companies to sort of catch up on the leaders, it is a long haul. So we do think that there is a little bit of this. On the API space, I think it's clearly looking attractive from a price and a valuation. Of course, the business doesn't have the same kind of economics as you would have in Indian pharma or generics, but clearly the valuations stack up in their favor, and hence you're seeing the API companies show a good rally in the last few.
Okay, Nitin, stay with us. We've got an exclusive story coming up, which you may also want to, listen into. And we're learning now from ETNA's reliable sources that Torrent Pharma has actually withdrawn its non-binding bid to buy out the founder's stake in Cipla. For more on this story, let me take it across to my colleague Anurag Joshi. Anurag, what are you picking up on this?
Yeah, so Torrent Pharmaceuticals, which was the front runner to buy the equity stake of the promoters in Cipla, has withdrawn its non-binding bid to purchase this stake. Now, this follows differences basically about the lack of consensus over the terms of a possible deal and over the valuation. Now, the Cipla's promoters were looking to sell about 33.5% equity stake in the company, and Torrent Pharmaceuticals had emerged as a front runner in the deal, and it was seen by analysts as a like-to-like acquisition where a strategic player is buying the stake. Now, in the recent past, the Cipla promoters had agreements over the terms of the transaction and also about the valuation. Torrent Pharmaceuticals had been looking to tie up with some private equity funds and also had tied up financing for this deal. Now, in the past, the other contenders for the deal were American private equity firm Blackstone, which had in September withdrew its bid, and Dr. Reddy's Labs.
Okay, so that's the latest coming in as far as Cipla story is concerned. For the longest time, we were talking about how Torrent could be picking up that stake of the Hamid family in Cipla, but seems like the talks are off the table now. There was a lot of flip and flop about the valuations. Finally, it seems like that deal is not happening. More importantly, rather than Cipla's stock price, we should focus on Torrent, Pharma's stock price as well as to how that is reacting, because the street had factored in that there could be an acquisition that might happen at higher valuation. Now that's not going to happen. That's the reason that stock is actually seeing a bit of a spike, because the worry about capital allocation, how they will get the money and at what price are they going to buy Cipla, because clearly it wasn't getting offloaded at a cheap price at all, was the worry, and that's the reason now you're seeing a bit of a spike. Actually, Torrent Pharma is concerned. Let me bring Shrikant as well on the charts, at least for now, on Cipla and Torrent Pharma. Shrikant, if you just had to read the charts, what would be your recommendation on the stock prices of these two names? Shrikant, the question is to you. I think you'll have to unmute yourself. Sure.
Yes. Yeah, so if we go through with the technical pattern of Torrent Pharma, then I think there we are seeing good amount of activity and buying interest. In fact, since last 2 days, if we see the pattern, then somebody was like consistently buying the stock at lower levels, and today it has broken its swing high. So based on the technical formation, it is heading for the levels of at least 2300, 2320 in the near term. Even at this level, it's a buy because it is into a proper technical setup. But for Cipla, I think it is going to spend some time because it failed to surpass the level of 1250 and it is consolidating. So maybe now other worries will keep the stock under pressure. But at this level, Torrent Pharma looks really good.
Speaking as well, Torrent Pharma looks very strong. And of course, now, Aisha, the fact that there is not going to be buy at any price or buying at a hefty valuation, and at least a clarity emerging in terms of now there's a withdrawal and there's no deal in the making of sorts.
Yeah, and the street you can see as is the sign on the line graph right now. The street is actually liking this clarity because such a large acquisition going outside of their portfolio is not something that the investor fraternity was comfortable with. I mean, yes, on paper it did make sense, but a large size acquisition now off the table, and you can see that stock relief come by. The stock now holding up a good 1.5% in trade, and that's exactly the price action that you saw from Zomato as well. As soon as the clarification came in from Dipinder Goyal, although it came in much later in the night yesterday, but today the stock started off the day at least with well amount of green, and now as well at 127, it's pretty much at an all-time high. We'll take a very quick break on that note. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion with all of our experts and Nitin Raheja.
What's that? That's a Manish Malhotra.
Not your dress.
The cupboard. The laminate is a Manish Malhotra design.
Century Laminates by Manish Malhotra. Fashion for your furniture.
Live it up, live it up.
Hey, why is the fan on? Want to cool the table or what? Hey, careful, huh? My daddy got it from abroad. Hey, disaster! How will you pay for the loss now?
In stock market, you should take risk as per your capacity and knowledge. Trade in options very carefully.
Wow, Dikra! Absolutely perfect! Take risk with full understanding.
Issued in the interest of investors by NSE.
Sir, is there a wedding? No. So, what is all the celebration for? Tuesday. Mangalwar.
Those who are financially secure enjoy a happier life. So keep growing your happiness. Keep investing. Bandhan Mutual Fund. Badhte raho. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Experience a new Verilux progressive lens designed with artificial intelligence so it can predict your natural eye movement. Verilux XR series for instantly sharp vision in motion and seamless transitions from near to far. Verilux by Essilor.
घर चार दीवारों से नहीं, उनमें बसे लोगों की खुशियों से बनता है, जिनका छोटा सा हिस्सा है बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा। और जब परिवार अपना है, तो अकाउंट भी फैमिली वाला ही होना चाहिए। अब बढ़ाओ बॉब के संग त्योहार की उमंग। बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा, हमेशा आपके लिए।
What you're missing on the inside is waiting for you out there. Write the missing part of your story. The new Safari. Reclaim your life.
How easy was it for you to set your base, your first international base in Dubai?
Dubai makes it very easy for the companies around the world to come and set up here. And UAE, because of the policies, really helped in setting up this office as the international hub.
How easy or difficult was it for you to set up shop here in Dubai?
UAE, specifically Dubai, has been at the forefront of adopting payment technology. The ease of doing business is very high here.
Innova CapTab Limited, an integrated pharmaceutical company in India, launches an initial public offering of equity shares of face value of 10 rupees each through the book building process, with a price band of 426 rupees to 448 rupees per equity share. Bid offer opens on Thursday, December 21, 2023 and closes on Tuesday, December 26, 2023. For risk factors and more details, please refer to the RHP available on the websites of SEBI, BRLMs, stock exchanges and the company.
Whenever I had ice cream or cold water, I would experience a sharp shooting sensation. So I just kept ignoring it. Even my hot chai was giving me the same amount of discomfort. My dentist recommended Sensodyne. So now I can be completely carefree and sip my hot cup of tea. It really works.
मैडम को पैसे से प्यार नहीं है।
भाई साहब, पैसे से प्यार है तभी तो एयू से करार है।
ऐसा क्यों?
आपका बैंक सेविंग्स अकाउंट पे इंटरेस्ट देता है
3 महीने में एक बार।
मेरा एयू हर महीने। सोच बदलो और बैंक भी। एयू स्मॉल फाइनेंस बैंक, बदलाव कम है।
Welcome back. You're watching Closing Trades on ET Now, and for now you have Nifty, which is 21,350. You have Bank Nifty, which is a 200-point lower, but it's the broader markets which are actually outperforming yet again. Wipro is the stock that you need to have on your radar. 7% surge. Yes, what's the story there? We're still, trying to find that out. But for now, it's the entire IT pack, to be honest. HCL Tech is also high, around 3%. So there is a bit of a momentum at play there. Nitin, what would be your take regarding the IT sector? Is it the time to start buying, or maybe a month down the lane when the IT numbers will come out for Q3 would be a better opportunity?
Look, I think IT has seen a rally already. We've seen a very significant rally in the last 1 month. If you see all the top companies in the sector. If you go by the commentary that came out from Accenture recently, I think they sort of surprised people with a little more positive results than people were expecting. But, clearly, from a recovery perspective, I think it's yet a little bit of a long haul. It's yet a couple of quarters away. So I think, there has been a rally, and now this whole rally is becoming rotational, and it's moving down to other large caps, because, the mid caps already had done well even prior to this and have actually been delivering good numbers. It was the large caps where there was the concern. And the large caps, we've seen a rally in the top names, and now we are seeing happen in others also. But I would be a little circumspect. I would wait for the commentary to come in the Q1 results in January before really, wanting to believe that IT has turned. Because initial commentary and initial, interaction seems to indicate that we are yet a couple of quarters away.
Nitin, there's a lot of talk in the market on whether or not there is the froth building up in the IPO space, given the kind of subscription frenzy that we've had of late. Do you sense that be the case at all? I mean, even though we were just talking up as to, 2021, you had way more IPOs, number of IPOs, and a lot more money raised as well, as opposed to what we've seen this year so far.
Right. No, so, I mean, all telltale signs, if you go by anecdotal evidence, right? You pick up a newspaper and you see the amount of pages that are being devoted to IPOs. All telltale signs make it seem like, and the kind of oversubscription figures that we are seeing, the kind of grey market premiums, the kind of listings that are happening. It's not that the IPOs are coming necessarily cheap, but after that also they are sort of listening. It does seem that there is a lot of liquidity that is chasing the IPO market. And, of course, quality is going to suffer in the whole region. So yes, if you ask me, there is a lot of froth and visible froth that we see in the IPO markets presently. But it's just so much of liquidity that is today, domestic liquidity that is prevailing and is chasing. The other element is, normally speaking, whenever you see, historically, if you see promoters selling, the kind of selling we are seeing in the last few months, or PE and VC money selling, these guys are obviously seeing good prices and wanting to encash on it. So I do believe that there is froth in the market, and one has to be careful.
Okay, Nitin, on that note, we'll let you go. Appreciate you making time and speaking with us. But today we've been speaking with a whole host of corporates as well, and a lot of those stocks are actually reacting, whether it's all cargo logistics, where the management tried to explain their point of view of the entire restructuring and assuage that this is the last of the restructuring that we have seen and the entire transformation is going to be EPS accretive. Or it was GE Shipping talking about the entire Red Sea disruptions and how that's likely to play an impact. And then, of course, we also had other managements as well talking about what's happening to their business profiles as well. Transformers and rectifiers being case in point, wherein they are talking about a revenue of 3,000 crores by FY26. Listen into some of those interesting bites coming in from the managements.
If you look at the contract logistics business, has been cash profit generating business with consistent growth over the last 7-8 years. And now it would contribute to the capabilities for both P&L and led to the strength of balance sheet also for the combined entity, and provide support to the express logistics business as well. And combined, they can potentially grow faster, and therefore it should be EPS accretive, because profit should expand on the back of this.
We have not seen a big change in rates, except for on the routes which are specifically which are specifically dependent on that trade. So those rates have gone up a lot. So we haven't, not too much except in individual routes. But yes, if this continues, you could see a more widespread tightening of the market for tankers as well.
So when I'm saying 10 to 15% increase in the prices is not only because of the raw material, but it is the margins are increasing. So when the margins are increasing, last year, we had a bit of 9.5% or 9.7%. So this year is going to cross 10%, and in the coming year, it is going to be definitely more than the double figure. So it will be, say, 13 to 14%.
Back with closing trades right here, Niti. Now just mapping the last half an hour of trade, and a sudden cool off actually in the market. So it's not quite, that 0.5% to 0.7% gain that we were earlier sitting on. We've cracked from there and again beginning to perk up just that wee bit. 21,400 plus now in the Nifty futures. Wipro, by the way, is up 7.5% now in trade. Must bring up the intraday graph because this stock has been spiking, and the spike has really come in the last hour and a half or 2 hours or so. 463 now on the stock. HCL Technologies in tandem with it, 3% higher, and it's a similar price pattern. It's not like to start off day these stocks were actually holding out. The best of the move has only come in the last lap or so, so 3% higher there. TechM as well, 2.5% higher too. That said, this Maruti, Tata Motors as well looking very, very strong. Britannia has had actually a decent day in this current market volatility, or pause if you can call it that. So these stocks as well are looking good. By the way, LTIM Infi as well are now catching up, and a completely similar price action, big spike up coming in on both LTI Mindtree as well as Infosys, where the chart will just come off for you on your screens. Now again at the session highs, 1560 on Infi as we speak right now. TCS2 holding up 1% while we're at it. So it seems like an across the sector move, led of course by Wipro. Ashi Anand too joins in on the show right now. Ashi, hi, afternoon. Lot of interest in the IPO market, and considering you track this space closely, any business that you've liked, any IPO that you've subscribed to?
Thanks for having me on the show. So yeah, we are tracking the IPO space. There are some definitely certain interesting kind of IPOs coming up in terms of certain So there are certain D2C brands which are coming up. There are certain other digital platforms. So it is a space that we are tracking. The only problem is, I think, the IPO market is probably a bit too hot. You're seeing participation probably being too high. There's a large amount of IPOs which probably aren't of that high quality, seeing very large subscription numbers. So it's not really the healthiest space, and it's you may even like an IPO, but it's very difficult to get subscription. So it is a space that we are tracking, but honestly, at some level, we're a bit more concerned about some level of froth that you're probably seeing here, as compared to seeing it as being very interesting, really.
Naresh with us as well. Naresh, metals as a pack has also been doing quite well. Call it the dollar weakness, which is below the mark of 102, but something definitely is working out well for the entire basket. Apart from Hindustan Copper that you've been quite positive on, any other name that merits a look?
So in this pack, Jindal Steel has been a leader. So that has corrected from 750.55 to 720 levels. So that's a stock which can again go back to new high. So in metals, that is one. Second is to look out for a dip on NMDC whenever it dips. That's a strong trend. So that's the second one. So mining looks interesting. And then we are seeing in the small cap and the mid cap metal names. So we've seen a good breakout in Sham Metallics. Right now, we are seeing a good breakout happen in Mukund Limited, which is hitting multi-year highs. So the focus seems to be shifting from the core steels to specialty steel, wherein we are seeing good chart formations in something like a Mukund and a Vardhaman specialty steel, etc. So overall, the sector is seeing a shift in terms of leadership. So I would like Jindal Steel and in mining and MDC on dips.
Actually, the same question on metals to you really. Does it seem like this is a sustainable move? Because it's pretty closely linked right now with the way the yield has been panning out in the US.
I'm sorry, what's the question, Kavi?
Yeah, I just wanted to understand your thoughts, Ashi, on metals, whether that's a sector that you're looking at right now, what's happening in the market is a sudden move up, closely interlinked with the way the dollar has been panning out. If that correlation were to be true, does it seem like this is just a short-term move that you're seeing in metals?
I would think so, right? So if you're just looking at the move, it's clearly a tactical trading kind of call. You're seeing US interest rates having peaked. You're seeing the 10-year GSEC having fallen from 5 to about 3.9%. And I think it's within that context that you're seeing a certain amount of strength in metals. You're seeing a larger risk on trade, FI flows starting to come back in. So I think that's really the context of the current strength in metals. But if you just look at it from a slightly longer term perspective, the Chinese economy is really struggling. And importantly, it's the housing sector in China which is really struggling the most. I think just 2 days back, there was one other Chinese developer which went in for bankruptcy. Now, China has been the core driver of global demand for metals. And if the biggest demand driver is really going to be weak, it's really difficult to build any kind of longer term fundamental call on at least the core metals. Now, there are certain rare earth metals that go into EV batteries, etc. That is a different space. But in terms of your normal aluminum, steel, etc., we are seeing this as a trading play, but not very attractive from a longer term perspective.
Okay, so not very attractive from a long term. There could be these sporadic moves that come in some of the metal names. We're talking about IT stocks in the large cap IT, but don't lose sight of the mid cap IT because Persistent is sitting at fresh record high. It's up 90% this year. You also have Cyient, which is sitting at fresh life highs. Birlasoft is also in that list, wherein that stock too is sitting at 740 levels, which is the highest that we have seen in its lifetime. So record high for that. And Zensar Tech too is higher at around 620 thereabouts. But pharma, that's the space which is gaining ground. So Concord Bio 10% higher, JB Chemicals, that's higher by around 8%. And then of course you also have names like AstraZeneca. Nuresh, your view on the charts of some of these names?
So AstraZeneca looks interesting in the whole pack because that's a stock which has come back to the highs made in 2021. A lot of names have not been able to do so. And there were two tops around that 5,000 mark. We made a 5,000 top also a few days back. So once it sustains 5,000, that is a clean breakout where it could slowly and steadily head up. So any dips remain a buy on AstraZeneca.
Shrikant, wanted to get your sense on this, big move that you're currently seeing in IT. And, one would think that it would pause anytime soon, but now Wipro is scaling higher by almost 7%, 7.5% actually on the futures.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it is very interesting formation that Wipro is forming on weekly and long-term charts. It was below these levels for almost 1.5 years. And after crossing this level, now we are seeing substantial upward activity in the stock. Also, if we go through with the relative performance of IT companies, then in that Wipro is doing really well and it is now gaining much better, or maybe it is outperforming better than the other peer of in this particular sector. So based on the formation, I think it is heading for the levels of at least 500 in next few weeks. But at current levels, we like Tech Mahindra, which is around 1280, 1275. There we feel that it is heading for the levels of at least 1350, 1370. The stock has changed its entire trading range. So based on the formation, it's a buy at current levels with a stop loss close to 1250.
Point taken. So that's the latest coming in on the IT stocks and what the charts are suggesting for that one. But Polycab is the stock which is down about 5%, and Varun Beverages too is cooling off 4% higher. Of course, Ashi, we had seen Polycab had been a massive wealth generator. I mean, if you look at the 2-3 years chart, this stock has completely changed its orbit. And Varun Beverages too has been a consistent performer. In fact, we were just looking at some of the data points. And this is one of those only stocks which has actually given a positive return each of the last 10 years, if I have it right. What's your view on counters like this? Should people be looking at adding positions into them?
So I think what you're seeing within consumer, right, is actually quite interesting. A large part of the space has actually been struggling for growth, right? But if you see the certain segments, firstly, which are doing relatively better. So I think anything linked to building materials, and that's really where Polycab fits right in. So anything linked to building materials has actually been doing very well. So especially anything going into real estate, also anything related to piping, right? Because there is a lot happening in terms of pipe demand, both from the government and from the housing sector. So I think those pockets are kind of doing well. Now, within kind of that, you also have certain companies which have actually just been executing that much better. So I think Polycab is a very good example. Varun Beverages is another decent example of consumer companies that have actually been outperforming. So I think in a larger sector, which has overall been struggling a bit over the last couple of years, clearly pockets which are interesting.
You always buy good businesses at a good price as well, right, Ashi? Are the valuations that some of these names are at, do they look comfortable for anyone to add positions? And I'm not talking about those who've been holding and, riding the move on these counters or even buy afresh.
Honestly, not really. Valuations, it just becomes, especially in certain of the hot consumer names, it becomes very, very difficult to justify valuations. If you try to build a DCF, you have to honestly have projections that start bordering on ridiculous in order to justify where some of these companies are trading. I think you're seeing this in certain pockets of consumer, you're seeing this in certain pockets of in capital goods, defense. Small cap is another space. A lot of small caps, you're also seeing similar kind of issues. So I think in a market where the overall underlying momentum is quite strong, I think sentiment is positive, the longer term outlook is looking good. It's important not to get carried away. There is a right price at which you need to buy a company, and if you ignore that, your investment story may not be very pretty.
Point taken. I also wanted to talk about the auto sector because 2023 marked that entire transition from smaller passenger vehicles to SUV, because that was the biggest trend that we have seen over the last couple of years, and premiumization, and also the fact that this year there were a lot of big launches in the two-wheeler category, those big bike launches that happen and the partnerships that happen. But first, let me go across to my colleague Sumit to get a sense as to what are the launches that we are expecting in 2024 and how is it likely to pan out. Sumit?
Price of four-wheeler and two-wheelers can increase between 2 to 5% in the new year.
Okay, so that's about the auto launches lined up, but there has been urban consumption which has been doing well in terms of hospitality as well, whether it was the hotel prices this year or the kind of prices that we have paid for movie tickets. That tells you that there's a lot of pent-up demand. Ashi, what's your take on consumption right now, urban consumption and the entire premiumization wave, and which stocks do you think are best placed to play that theme?
Perspective, right? This is clearly one of the most attractive themes in India. I know valuations are a bit stretched, but what you've always seen globally is the moment you cross something called a $2,000 per capita mark, you see something called an S-curve that plays out, a sharp rise in discretionary consumption. And you clearly are seeing that in terms of underlying trends taking place in the Indian economy, especially urban consumption over the past few years. I think from the longer term perspective, we are very positive on discretionary consumption. It just over the slightly shorter term, you are seeing, I think, some amount of a base effect having caught up. You are seeing weakness in certain parts of urban consumption. Rural consumers have been weak for some time. That's coming back. But on the urban consumer part, you are seeing certain pockets of kind of weakness. I think you can explain this by some amount of weakness in the startup ecosystem in terms of startup funding. The IT sector is a bit weak. These are strong drivers of income creation, and which is where you're seeing some pockets of weakness in terms of urban discretionary consumption. Now, this is something that we aren't too concerned about over the longer term, but it just that you may get better pockets of opportunity to kind of buy into some of these names.
Since we're on the subject, let me also take it across to Avan. It seems like there's a battle of the biggies, if you want to call it that, at the box office this Friday. You've got Donkey and you've got the other one, Salar. I was thinking Prahar in my head. Yeah, but yeah, the movie is by Prabhas. So let's figure out from Avan as to what the bookings are like.
Well, film go. Get ready, because after 2 hits from Shah Rukh Khan, this is the third one that is expected to set the box office on fire. I'm talking about Dunki, which has arrived in cinema halls, and this is a Rajkumar Hirani directed film, and the numbers clearly seem to reflect, of course, SRK's immense popularity. Do remember that you had Pathan as well as Jawan, which were the other 2 films that released this year starring SRK that earned over 1,000 crores globally. This film has collected close to 10.3 crores. It sold close to 3.6 lakh tickets for day 1 across India, and on Tuesday alone collected close to 7.6 crore. This is just advanced booking numbers. So clearly it's after much fanfare, and it clearly seems that the morning shows as well of the film have seen at 26% occupancy. The afternoon shows as well have a pretty solid occupancy as well. People are arriving in cinema halls on the weekday, and over the Christmas weekend, of course, it's expected to do much better. And then there's also Salar Ceasefire Purse 1 that will be releasing, and that film too is going to be in a number of languages: Telugu, Hindi, Malayalam, Tamil, Kannada, etc. And that has grossed close to 6 crore rupees in terms of the across languages. They sold close to 2.4 lakh tickets for the 4,300 odd listed shows. The Telugu version clocked in close to 3.5 crores in terms of gross revenue. More than 1 lakh tickets sold there. The Malayalam version as well has done quite well with close to 65,000 odd tickets sold. And the Hindi version too, close to 1.1 crores is what they have managed to clock in. But do keep in mind that this film will not be released in national chains, including the likes of PVR and Mirage Cinemas in the south. But nonetheless, it is going to bring some festive cheer for moviegoers for sure.
Yep, what more could you want over the long weekend? Lots of options to do. But let me take it across to Sharad, find out what the dealing room chatter as well is like this Friday.
In focus is Axis Kits Technology, and what we are hearing from the dealers is the strong HNI buying is seen across this cash counter, and the stock has hit its lifetime high levels as well. Now looking at the volumes also, it has picked up almost 6 times its 20-day average, and the dealers have stated that a strong QIP response is also being seen. Now the response is coming in from one large family office and a clutch of domestic investors, which includes PMS house as well as mutual fund houses. Apart from this, we also did a channel check, and overall fundamentally in their aerospace vertical, the demand or the inquiries have started increasing as well. So important development coming in Axis Kits Technology.
Axis Kits Technology, that's been the talk across the dealing rooms this Friday afternoon. But let's also get you some BTST trades that you could look for executing. Naresh, what's on your list?
So first is the one Maruti, which is reversing from the support zones of 10,000, could see some follow-up move going forward. Stop loss at 10,150, target price of 10,450. Second is a buy on Sun TV, a new 52-week high at good momentum. Stop loss at 717, target price of 745.
Okay, that's the take coming in, Sun TV, and that surely is a big buzzer in today's trading session. I think on the last count as well, the stock was holding up 4.5%. In fact, we should bring up the intraday graph. Yeah, there you go, 4.5% right now on Sun TV. Nifty, of course, has covered most of its lost ground in any case. But actually, before we let you go, just wanted to understand in the last 2 months, if you've been a buyer or a seller anywhere in the markets, have you changed any of your portfolios anywhere?
Change that we've had is we've gone from a slightly more cautious to a clearly more bullish kind of outlook. Now, this is selective. This is more large and mid caps. You continue to see froth in small caps. But I think fundamentally from 2 months back, where there were a number of headwinds to the market, you're really starting to see low clear skies. So if you just kind of look at what has changed, 2 months back, you'll be concerned about elections coming to next year. With various state government election results coming in, that risk seems to have reduced. The Fed was fairly hawkish. They have turned clearly dovish, and we've seen a 10-year G-Sec yield in the US fall from 5% to 3.9%. That was a major overhang for the markets. That has gone away. FIs were pulling out, I think, over $2.5 billion for 3 months straight. Last month, they've turned positive. You've also had kind of oil prices starting to cool off. Geopolitical risk around Israel and Palestine have also not increased. So I think broadly from an environment where there were a number of kind of reasons where markets could potentially correct, or there were clear headwinds that we were seeing. The nice part, I think we're ending the year, and we hopefully going to be starting the year with fairly clear skies. It's been for the last some amount of time, you've had a number of potential things that could go wrong, and markets have been moving up or climbing a wall of worry. I think now when you're looking at things for the coming year, hopefully like the new year kind of just continues the strong momentum we're seeing in the markets, and we start with a longer term bull market.
Okay, point taken. On that optimistic note, Ashi, we let you go. Appreciate you making time and speaking with us. But for the markets right now, it's been a week that we're ending in the green, but it hasn't been a great week, and bears this time have actually come in on top. If you look at the weekly move, we've managed to snap the 7-week gains, and this week perhaps we are likely to go with a cut of around 0.5%. It's just 3 minutes left, so not that we'll recover the full 0.5%, but nonetheless, it doesn't look like we are going to end in the green for the week gone by. In fact, for the mid cap and small cap and we are looking at snapping the 7-week gaining streak. It is also the metals pack which had been gaining for 7 consecutive weeks. There is going to be a bit of turnaround there. Nifty Bank too is down after 4 weeks of gain that we have seen. In terms of the various sectors, it's actually FMCG that's come on the top. That's been led by the gains that we saw in Britannia. Tata Consumers was doing well in the week gone by, and of course the smaller names like Varun Beverages, Radico Khaitan also supported the index move. Pharma and the bulk of the rally actually came today. So whether it was an AstraZeneca, a Loris, a Devi's, a Concord Biotech, and many other names from the broader market, those were the reasons we had an outperformance from the pharma index in the week gone by. Energy too saw quite a bit of uptick. Reliance, for instance, managed to do well for itself. You also had the other oil and gas names like Oil India, ONGC, and Gail for that matter, that are ending the week with a gain of around 3 to 5.7%. What was in the red? It was clearly the PSU banking index. That's seen a dropping of almost 3%, so quite a few cuts there. And then Adani, a group of stocks, didn't have a very good week. So Adani Enterprises was down 6%. Adani Ports came under pressure, cut of 5% for the week gone by. But clearly it was Wipro which has done quite well for itself with that solid up move today. So going home with the week being higher by around 4% for Wipro. So overall, a bit of a week that bulls would want to forget, but given the fact we hit record highs this time around, there was a bit of a tumble that happened suddenly on 20th December. We at least managed to stabilize by the end of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that really is the solace and the takeaway from the week gone by. So while yes, it was Nifty PSU Bank, IT, Nifty Bank like Anisha highlighted, as well as metals and autos which snapped their winning streaks of multiple weeks. But yeah, I mean, on a net basis, the Nifty didn't do badly at all. Remember, we're stepping into a long weekend, and then the last week of the year, traditionally as well, the volumes would dry up. So for that, we're not looking bad at all at the 21,300 point. Yes, got a little bit of a shake off on Wednesday, but that said, we've made a decent comeback for ourselves as well. So that's pretty much it. Today, of course, the big high flyers have been the likes of Loris Labs. Persistent, by the way, has closed in with a 4.5% gain, as has been the entire technology pack led by Wipro, HCL Technologies, TechM. They've all done very well. There's been Sun TV with a 5% move, and then Gail, of course, has been sitting right on top there with a 7.5% gain. Polycab could not recover, 4.5% lower for that one. MCX, Torrent Pharma, the big mover from yesterday, saw a bit of an ease down coming in today's trading session. There was Dalmia Bharat as well, which was a laggard, and then PVR Inox as well, which has held lower by 2.5%. But that's pretty much it on this edition of Closing Trades. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you with all the market action on Tuesday morning. But here's wishing you and your families a Merry Christmas from all of us.